Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly show of What is School For? My name is I'm the CEO of Classroom Without Walls and also the host of this weekly live streaming show. You can also listen to us on the traditional audio-only podcast. Just search What is School For? On this show, I interview leading entrepreneurs, business leaders, teachers, parents, and students to come here to discuss, debate, and disrupt education. Our goal is to future-proof the next generation. Today, I'm really excited to have Jacob McMillen on the show to talk about his journey, incredible journey from hating writing in school to where he is today, pursuing writing as a career, as a freelance copywriter, making more than $40,000 per month. And Jacob is also a featured expert on our book, that I co-wrote with Julia McCoy, Skip the Degree, Save the Tuition. And ever since I booked him, I have been a stalker of Jacob's content and watching a bunch of his YouTube videos and amazing blog articles. I'm so inspired by his journey and his transformation. So in today's interview, we're going to learn more about his journey from charging initially $15 per article to where he is today. And also, of course, we're going to spend some time talking about college, talking about education, and where he even learned his skills. And also, we're going to discuss why and how copywriting is a promising and profitable career. So many parents came to me, they told me, Dr. If my kid is not doing law or finance or computer or engineer, they are being perceived as a failure. That is totally not true. So Jacob is the perfect case to illustrate that. So make sure you stay for the entire interview. And as always, a big shout out to StreamYard for being a sponsor of Classroom Without Walls. Over the last 4 years, I have tried all the third-party tools to go live on social media. StreamYard is my favorite. In the comment section, there's a link for you to check out StreamYard for free for 2 weeks. So check it out and send me a message if you have any question. We are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitch. Quite a few of you are already here. So let me know where you guys are joining us live from, social media-wise and geographically speaking. Without any further ado, Jacob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm such a fan. Even though I just discovered you since this book, I just love everything you do. So as I mentioned earlier, you have this really incredible journey to get to where you are today. But the funny story about your success is that you didn't really go to school because of your love for writing. In fact, you hated writing when you were in school, and you hated 90% of the books that your teachers were asking to read in their literature classes. To me, that is quite incredible. So can you please share this backstory with us, how you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think so. I was always a big reader growing up. And so I think kind of like because I had my own interests that I focused on in reading, when I got into school and they were handing us these really specific, kind of a narrow range of topics and things that we'd read, it didn't really mesh with what I had already enjoyed reading. And then the types of stuff they'd have you write, like I was an okay writer. I didn't really need to, try that hard to get a good grade on the writing, but I had no interest in what they had me writing about. So for me, writing just did not register on the list of things that I enjoyed doing. It was more like something like if I got a writing assignment, I hated it because I knew it was going to take a lot of time and I wasn't going to get anything out of it. And that was pretty much my only context for writing, was just kind of, literature class. And so, going through college, I was just kind of on default mode. You kind of get raised knowing that you're going to college. And so I was there. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I was just kind of like looking at degrees, like, okay, which one gives me the most options when I get, out at the end, and just kind of not really thinking a whole lot about it. I ended up going with an accounting career. And by the time I graduated, the only thing I actually knew for sure was that I did not want to be an accountant.
What?
So,
Okay. So you spent 4 years like in college to discover, okay, this is not what I want to do. That is so funny. But like, it's a very familiar story to me. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of like, I went the business degree route just because it was like that gives you some options. That's kind of, going into business to me as a 20-year-old sounded cool. And so then accounting was like the most prestigious of the business degrees at my school at the time. So it's just like, I guess I'll do this. And then, getting out of that, I in my last semester of college, I took a web design class.
Wow.
The funny story is I didn't even actually get into it. I tried to get into it unsuccessfully. And so I messaged, and I'd been trying to get into these sort of new media, digital classes for 2-3 years. And just had not been able to get, because it was a very small class size, never was able to get in. So finally, like my last semester, I messaged the teacher of the class and I said, I've been trying to get into this class for two years. Is there any way I can just come in and sit on the class, sit in on the class, even if I'm not getting a credit for it? And he told me, actually, we just had someone drop out and it was too late to add new students in, so you can come sit in their chair. So I went in, sat in, learned how to build a website. And I was super into it, thought it was really interesting, kind of started looking into, okay, if you were to build a business around a website, what comes next? And it's like, okay, you got a site, then you need to get people to the website. And that's called SEO, if you want Google to send people to it. So I started looking into SEO, and then when I graduated, I wasn't ready to work full time. At the time, I was actually going to kind of like an unaccredited seminary. It was like part-time hours, whole long story there, but I was basically looking for part-time work. So I went and found a 2-person SEO agency, and just got hired as like a, like minimum wage person coming in to do some work for them. And that was kind of my introduction to online marketing. And then I started kind of seeing that a lot of what they did was driven on writing. For them to get search traffic, they needed a ton of blog articles. And at the time, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is something I want to do, but it was like, this is something I probably can do, because my context for writing up to that point was just, teacher gives me assignment, I spend a few hours on it, I get an A, So it was like, I can probably do the same thing, but now I'm getting paid instead of an A, which frankly, I liked a lot better, So I kind of started getting into that and just realizing that writing kind of fueled a huge portion of like online marketing and SEO and online business. Still wasn't connecting the dots on, potential for it to be a career and skill set. It was just kind of something I was doing to pay the bills. But about a year into doing that, I came across the concept of copywriting, which was more sales writing. And instead of, writing blog posts for, $15 on pest control, it was like crafting this, sales narrative on a landing page where you're really looking to tap into what people are thinking about, their interests, their desires, the challenges they're facing. And that was super fun to me. I thought it was really interesting and enjoyable. And it connected back. I had actually paid my way through most of college from doing a door-to-door sales job. And I had learned kind of a lot about sales in that process, but I didn't really think it would be applicable to me because I didn't want to go into sales. There was a lot about sales that I didn't like. There were a few pieces I did like. And when I discovered copywriting, I was like, oh, wow, this is everything I love about sales, minus everything I hated about sales. And I started to discover that I actually really enjoyed the writing part of it. I think it was because it was more objective based and there was kind of some psychology to it. And it was all of a sudden I was like, okay, I actually kind of do like writing. And then I pretty quickly after that knew, hey, copywriting is going to be the career for me. And, it's been 9, 10 years now, and I still love it as much today as I did when I first discovered it. So.
Wow, what an incredible journey. I already read your story, but just like listen to you to share the story personally, I feel like, wow, like I got goosebumps, like so inspired. So I have a few follow-up questions. So at the time when you were doing your literature class, writing for the teachers, have you ever thought that one day you are going to build an entire career based on your writing skills? Never occurred to you?
Not even remotely. I honestly, I was not even aware of any writing careers. I think maybe I kind of loosely was aware of like there's journalism, or you have people who are book authors. But I had no real context to think that I would ever be pursuing those sorts of that side of things. And so, yeah, honestly, I don't think the idea of pursuing a writing career had ever once occurred to me prior to graduating college.
And I have to say, you said you have been in the space for 8+ years. And even nowadays, I work with lots of high school age, college age students. Still, this concept of becoming, like, for example, copywriter, pursuing a career in writing is still very foreign to them. And I think to me, that really shows the gap between, what is actually happening inside the classroom versus what is actually happening outside the classroom. And now we literally have people from Nigeria, from Australia, from the US, from India joining us live. I'd love to hear, share in the comment section, how are those kind of emerging, like to us, it's not even emerging, like has been here for quite a few years, but to the traditional education space, how are those emerging careers being perceived in your country? I'd love to hear from everyone. And so for you, Jacob, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give to younger self? At the time, I also thought it was really interesting because you said that you chose accounting because it is a prestigious degree, because it's really the best. I feel like many students actually do that. They select a degree based on, okay, my school is really famous for this or that. Therefore, they choose a degree or a career or a future based on that, as opposed to really look within, hey, what do I want to do, right? So It's so fascinating that you said that. So I wonder if you can share with us, knowing what you know today, if you could talk to the Jacob, about to start freshman, getting started, college life, and what would you tell him?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, the thing that I appreciate about the college experience is that it puts you in connection with a bunch of people from a very diverse geographic location. Like a lot up through high school, I had mostly only met people in my local area. Whereas in college, you meet people from not only all over the US, but all over the world. And so that for me was the most beneficial part of college. And I don't think you necessarily need to invest 4 full years of your life to benefit from an experience like that. So I think for me, like if I could go back and do it over and give myself advice on doing it over, I think I would have loved to discover the world of freelancing and the world of kind of solopreneurship while I was still in high school or heading into college, and then maybe taken a year and done some sort of program that would maybe like a 1 or 2 year program that would have connected me with people from around the world in some other context, some other educational or instructive context, maybe something that was more like volunteer based or something like that. And then I could start to build the business on the side. And I mean, even if I had done very little to grow my writing business through 2 years after college, the amount of distance I would have made up with that second 2 years would have had me way ahead of waiting 4 years and then some to really get going. And I see it a lot with the younger generation, Gen Z and even younger, like they're thinking about this like in high school. That some of them are thinking about it in middle school, kind of like you were mentioning earlier. Some of your kids are like selling stuff on eBay. It's amazing how early a lot of the younger generation is thinking about this stuff. And I think if it's like, unless you have a specific career that you want to use college to attain, because there's definitely still careers where you have to get the degree. But if you don't know that, I think it's so much more interesting to kind of like pursue a range of experiences and let something come to you. I think I think you don't really know what you want to do. You don't really know what you enjoy until you actually try it. So the more things you can try and the more experiences you can have in that early stage of life where you kind of aren't on the clock to make specific amounts of money, to pay specific bills. I think young people could definitely do a lot more for themselves within that 4-year period than, going to school.
Amen. Amen. That's why, I classroom without walls. We believe the best education happens outside the classroom. Yeah. What you just mentioned reminds me of recently I saw a clip from Simon Sinek, and he was talking about college degree because now so many people are really questioning this. He said that all the courses you are going to take from college are irrelevant. But what you can get out of college, as you mentioned, Jacob, is the connections you're making, the people you're connecting with. But then in my mind, nowadays, you have social media, you have all those different mastermind groups, conferences, local events, meetups. Do you really have to spend 4 years to just get the connections? And I also love what you mentioned, to really doing this intergenerational networking, right? Not only with your peers, but with people who are actually in the industry practicing those things. Really, really, really powerful. I love it. So
that's actually such a good point that I didn't mention, is the fact that even though you are meeting a diverse group, it's all your age for the most part. You aren't really connecting with like multiple generations. You aren't getting to sit next to and talk with people who, have 30, 40 years more of experience. And that's a huge gap, when you even when we talk about current options, like with masterminds or retreats or things, to be able to sit next to people who have been doing what you want to do for 30 years is super powerful. And that's awesome. And I just wanted to mention too, the question you asked about for people listening about when they are they aware of copywriting? Even here in the US, almost nobody's heard of copywriting. Like, unless you're in the marketing or like entrepreneurship space, nobody's heard of it. And it's literally every single business on the planet uses copywriting, and somehow still, I think probably 90% of the world has no clue, has never heard the word before. So it's kind of crazy, even, regardless of location, it's kind of crazy how little known this career is.
That is such a great point. Yes, totally. I think because we are kind of in our own space, right? I have you as my friend. I have Julia McCoy. I have lots of amazing copywriters in my network. That's why I feel like, but outside this bubble, people are like, no, that's not a real career at all. Like here, it's a perfect point from Pooja, based in India. We have 20 people live with us. So I want to hear more from the situation in your country. So she said that copywriting in India sucks. Parents don't even want their children to pursue such kind of careers rather than the traditional, exactly the medical and the government, lawyer, doctor, or failure. That's pretty much what I heard. So this is really universal. Yeah. And I love this comment. So that's why it's so nice, Pooja, you are here, watching this, listening and learning from Jacob, so you can enlighten other people. I also love this comment from Lance, staying up so late, join us live from Australia. And he has co-authored 3 books relating to his career, and but didn't even go to college. I really love stories like that. Even before we went live, Jacob, you and I were talking about, is college still the golden ticket to career and life success? So let's talk about copywriting. So let's say that for a young person, like a fresh college graduate, or maybe still in college, this kid wants to pursue a degree to become a copywriter, or maybe even for working professionals, reinventing themselves, want to pursue copywriting as a career. So where is a good place to get started to learn the skill? Do you think this person has to go through a formal education training in order to become a copywriter? So what advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, so when it comes to writing education in particular, there is so much free training available online. I got into this space back in 2012, and even then there was a ton of free training. And obviously, if you want to go more intensive, there was paid programs. There's great paid programs now. Biased, I have one of my own, so of course I think it's great. One of the things that we didn't have 10 years ago that we have now is there's a lot of great training on building a business around writing. That was one thing I sort of had to stumble my way into, because it was most of the training was focused on, just learning how to write as a skill. But learning how to perform a specific skill and then learning how to sell that skill and build a business around that skill are two entirely different things. And so, now there's been I think over the last 5 years, especially, there's been a lot of more focus on helping people build businesses around service-based skills. And I think that's that's kind of the biggest key for why college is no longer the golden ticket, because before you're really just kind of getting a stamp that allowed you to go get a well-paying full-time job. But we're kind of in this point in history where, especially in the U.S., over the last 40 years, we've had 40 years of wage stagnation. And so the reality is, you don't need to be in a full-time position to get a great paycheck. And you can build a full career around one really specific skill. Like, usually, like in most full-time jobs, you kind of have to use a little bit of a batch of skills at a kind of mediocre level to maintain the job. Whereas if you can just get pretty good at one specific skill, you have access to everyone in the world to sell that skill to them. And you kind of find that the skills that you're using in your job right now, the moment you get out of employment and offer that skill on the open market, it's worth double than what you were getting paid for it in-house. Like, even if you're not good at selling it, you're almost already making twice the amount to do the same skill. And writing, it's exactly like that. Copywriting, every single business on the planet needs copywriting. And so there's just endless demand. Like, even, online sales doubled between 2019 and 2020. And that was already after like 500% growth over, 8 years. And then it completely doubled, 100% year-to-year growth. And so it's just like, the demand's just outrageous. And we have people coming in who, were a nurse or a teacher or, in construction a few months ago, have always just kind of been writing as a hobby. And then a few months later, they're getting paid more than they were for their full-time job to be doing, writing as a service. And so it's just like, I think the ability to sell something to anyone around the globe, and the fact that hiring a freelancer has become so commonplace among businesses, is just completely flipped the script, changed the game, and you don't need that college stamp anymore.
Oh, I love that. I love stories. That makes me feel really excited. I can't wait to share this particular interview with many of my students. And I so agree, right? So if I had to learn, which I did, and learn more about copywriting, I would rather learn from someone like you, who is actually in the field, practicing this, learning this, modifying, adjusting, reiterating, than going to a school, learn from a teacher who doesn't really practice this. Because you and I, we know, like, things change, talking about algorithm, SEO, those things change on a regular basis. So it is so important to learn outside the traditional classroom from practitioners. So I so agree. It is cheaper, and you can probably make more money and use that money to sponsor your own education. Yeah. So here is a great question from Dan. He's asking, how did you discover copywriting through the typical academic writing process? And he said that he hated writing in school and learned to enjoy it when he was writing things that he was actually interested in, and in the style that he wanted to do.
Yeah, so I did not discover it through the academic process. It wasn't until afterward, as I was sort of exploring things on my own and starting to go down the rabbit trail that is online business, online marketing, that I, discovered that there was actual monetary demand for pieces of writing. And I kind of started playing around with blogging when I got out, and blogging on topics I was interested in. And that kind of started to make me discover, hey, I actually do kind of like writing if I'm talking about something I care about talking about. And then kind of getting into that aspect of using writing as creating sales assets and sort of the copywriting end of it. But whether you go sort of the sales copywriting side or even just the blogging side, going deep on topics you're interested in, both of those things today are used in marketing and are used in attracting people to brands. And you can make quite a bit of money to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Totally. And just like kind of follow up on this topic. So like, to do what you do today, And also given that, school, you cannot learn different type of writing. So what are some of the skills or knowledge that you have to unlearn, kind of unprocess? And what are some things that you have to relearn to do what you do today?
Yeah. So when I was first starting out my career, it was mostly just, I could write blog posts and I could write like website pages. And so I would just go out and pitch companies who were either asking for that or just companies I was aware of and say, hey, do you need this? And I found that if I sent out enough pitches, a small percentage of them would hire me. And so it was kind of just a numbers game, and I was kind of familiar with that concept because I had done that door-to-door sales job. I had one of the lowest rates of actually getting in and being able to talk with people through the door. But once I got in there, my close rate was through the roof. I was very good at like listening to them, letting them explain what the challenge was, and then matching what I was selling to the challenge they were experiencing. And so for me, it was kind of, I just knew that, hey, if I send out enough pitches, if I just hustle, if I just do the work to get in front of enough people, a small percentage of them will hire me every single time. And so it was just, for me, that was kind of how I grew my career up to about, trying to break down, maybe like 6 to 7K per month was just through that, just through pitching and writing, just those two skills all by themselves. And then from there, I started to go back to that initial introduction I'd had through SEO and started to see, hey, can I start ranking my own website for some of these, people who are looking for copywriters and get people to send me leads through that. And then within a year or two of doing that, I had doubled that amount and was up to about 15K per month. And I got to the point where I didn't have to go out and pitch anyone because people would just come to me through the site. And so then kind of with that, I started really enjoying the SEO side of things, started realizing that with clients, I could help them rank for their own keywords with, this just really in-depth, long-form blog content, which I really enjoyed writing because it was kind of like you're sitting down and you're asking yourself, people are searching for this specific keyword. How can I make the best possible resource online for this keyword? And then you just go do it. And I just really loved that process, and it had worked well for my own business. So I started doing it with clients and started helping them build their websites to, 60, 70,000 visitors per month. And then at that point, I was kind of like, well, wait a second. Like, if I can do that for them, why don't I do that for some businesses of my own? And so I started doing that, started kind of building some side businesses using that content marketing, the SEO, the copywriting. And that's kind of what took me up from 15, 20K per month up to that 40K per month mark. I think for most freelancers, you kind of start to cap out around that 15 to 20K where you just, because you are at the end of the day, you're still selling your time for the paycheck. So I was kind of looking for, how can I create some things that are more selling a bit more passively recurring to where if I need to take a month or two off, it's still working for me. And then I can get back to it, a bit later to keep it going. So that was kind of the journey there. So starting out, literally just cold outreach and knowing how to write, and then kind of transition into learning SEO. I've seen people do what I did through SEO through like LinkedIn or through Twitter, really building out a certain social channel. So there's multiple ways to bring, to learn some sort of like, it's called inbound marketing. You're bringing people to you. So, there's different channels for that, and different people use different ones. For me, it was SEO. I just love SEO. And then from there, it was kind of just, looking to find an audience that I could go use that inbound marketing to bring in, and a product that had a product market fit. And at that point, you're just kind of running a business, and there's a lot of little skills involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an incredible journey, right? As I mentioned earlier, from charging $15 per article to more than 40,000 per month. What an incredible journey. And thanks for sharing this with us. And also, it is so interesting. You kind of mentioned two main skills. One is writing. The second one is doing the cold outreach. And like many students or even young people, even like it doesn't matter the age, and many people are so afraid of doing cold pitches, and like this, like it's very uncomfortable, right? Like, oh, I don't want to bother people. Like, so how did you overcome, or did you even have any initial resistance to do that? I remember you said in one of the interviews you did, you asked your clients to do 20 cold pitches a week. So like, have you encountered people who had that inner resistance, like, oh, I don't know how to do this? So like, how do you help them get started to take that very first initial step?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Absolutely, yeah, it's a massive, very common issue. I think we're raised to believe that like if we don't get 9 out of 10, we're like not doing great. Anything under 9 out of 10 is like a B, and B is not great. Anything under 6 out of 10, we're like failing. Like that's you're completely failing. And it's not. It's just a whole different mentality coming into pitching, because it's like if you get 5 out of 100, you're doing great. like it's just such a different mentality, and it's very hard for people to push through that. One thing that I've really benefited from over the course of my career is that when I commit to trying something, I really buy in to the person whose model or blueprint I'm following. And I preset a metric that I'm going to get to before I personally evaluate whether it was a failure or a success. So when I did that door-to-door sales job, I knew they're going to just try to like brainwash me into this hyper positive, hyper hustle mentality through the summer. And I was like, cool, I'm going to sign up for it. It's 12 weeks. I'm going to listen to what they say. I'm going to do all the steps, even the, like their process was you wake up at like 6 a.m. and immediately take a cold shower, breakfast by 7:30. You're knocking on doors by 8 o'clock. Absolutely ludicrous. But I just pre-committed going in. I'm gonna do what they say to do, and then after a certain point, I'll evaluate whether it worked or not. Because a lot of people, they go into a new pursuit very skeptical, which is fine. Like I'm all about due diligence and being a skeptic up to the point that you decide to give it a try. And once you give it a try, you're inherently gonna have issues pop up. You're gonna second guess yourself. You're gonna see like it's gonna feel like a failure for a long time, unless you push through those things. You're never gonna get to the actual win. And so for me, that's just always been my thing is really committing, pushing myself through. And sometimes you have things that do actually fail. You push through, you overcome the challenges, and it doesn't work. And I've had a few of those over the course of my career. But the reality is, even if that happens like every other time, the ones that do pay off, the upside is so much that it makes it worth the ones that you push through and they don't work out. And so I try to help my students and the people who read my blog. I try to help them with that mentality just by consistently talking about it, just by consistently reminding them that 5 out of 100 is a win. So if you strike out 10 times in a row, that doesn't mean you failed. You got to get that next 90, because the 5 wins are going to be in the next 90. And it is just something that I think people have to I don't think anyone just clicks into it overnight. I think it's something you kind of, push into.
I mean, that's why they need to work with coaches like you, right? I think, going back, you say that under B is a failure. I can't tell you over the course of my 2 decades in the classroom and how many, like used to be like C is kind of average, right? So like when I used to give students C, they're like, oh, okay, I'm not happy, but there's no emotional like meltdown, things like that. But nowadays, if students get a B, they're like so upset, like, why did I get a B? So I think there's this obsession with being perfect, right? Like you have to get 9 out of 10. So if you bring that mentality to entrepreneurship, you are set up for failure. So I love how you have such a high level of emotional resilience, which also reminds me of a Harvard article that I read So they said that 85% of a person's career success actually comes from soft skills like resilience, and only 15% comes from hard skills. Like I think what you share with us is such a perfect example to illustrate that resilience, right? Like, yeah, 5 out of 100, I'm going to use this as my new rubric because I do lots of cold outreach. Okay, 5 out of 100, that's a win. Okay, I'm going to print it out, on my wall. So I love that. Yeah. So besides doing kind of cold outreaching, and here's a great question from Pooja. She was asking, like what are some starting ways to write a blog? So how do people get started? So kind of I have a similar question for you, which is that you didn't really go to school to learn like writing or blogging. So where did you actually learn the skill? If you can recall the old you 8 years ago, like where did you learn those skills? I think you mentioned a few classes. So maybe you can give people like Pooja some advice, like if they need to get started, how to get started. You guys should definitely follow Pooja, definitely follow Jacob. I'm going to share his link. And so besides that, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, the answer to learning things is often to find good examples and then just sort of reverse engineer them. And that sounds a little more advanced and technical than it actually is. It's literally just like for me, the way I got into writing the blog post that paid kind of a high amount was I just spent a lot of time reading the types of blog posts that I knew were like harder to do and like more advanced. And I would just look at like, just reading a lot of them gives you a feel for kind of the flow of them. But then I'd also look through like, hey, what makes this different than like these other blog posts that feel lower value and lower quality to me? Because I was just, there was like a template they'd give me to write the $15 articles on pest control, it wasn't anything special. It was just kind of like a little, like you do an essay in college, but no one's evaluating your thesis or anything. You're just intro, a few sections, conclusion. So it's kind of, I'd compare, hey, what are these other blog posts? What's different about these that's not in this one? And then I would just look to try to emulate that. I would look at, what are they taking you through? Are they doing case studies? Are there examples? Things like that. And sort of, over time, I just realized that it was really about substance. It's like, what's the takeaway that a blog post is trying to provide? And you should get that from the headline, so in the headline, you're making a promise about what the value that the reader is going to get from the post. And then your post is just, the goal of it is to provide that piece of value. So like one of my best performing articles on my site is how to become a copywriter. And so I basically just try to answer that question as best as possible, taking people from opening of what copywriting is and what a career in it looks like, all the way through step by step, how to build from first client to, recurring revenue to, making it a full-time career. So it's kind of just about that. You're thinking, what are people looking for? How can I make a promise that's going to attract them to this specific post? And then how can I write something that is going to answer the questions they have?
I love it. And also I remember on your website, you are actually giving away a free course. It's a free course about like blogging and how so definitely check it out. I actually check it out myself. It's really good. So let me share the website again. So that's the website.
Yeah, and right at the top of the website, you'll see I have a course that walks you through how to build a freelance writing or copywriting business. And so if you sign up there, it'll be like 2 weeks of emails that walk you through a bunch of different concepts.
Yeah, what I learned is, do you feel like, so what I learned is, I got my PhD, but after my doctorate degree, when I started to embrace online writing, what I discovered is that, wow, online writing is so different from school-based writing. Did you discover that? So there was so much that I literally had to unlearn, because we're not advised to use emotional words. You want to be as objective as possible. I don't even use the word I, because that weakens my arguments, things like that. So like, are there certain things from like school-based, like people like still learning today, that you think are kind of irrelevant to like blogging or online writing?
Oh yeah. I mean, it connects to both writing and marketing. I remember my marketing class in school was so behind. Like we're talking 10 plus years behind what was going on actually in the field at that moment.
At
Uh,
least, yeah.
yeah. And writing too. I actually find that some of my students who have the hardest time getting into online writing are like literature majors or people who got a degree that was very writing oriented. And it's because they have a lot of these formatting, a lot of these emphasis is so hardwired. You know, even to like, even when we talk about like typos, I'm terrible with typos. Like I'll admit that all day long. I have, it's just a weakness of mine and it's become worse over the years. Like I feel like I was better at it earlier on. But it's one of those things that like, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, you know, it's not really connected to the value people receive. It can, like for certain people, it can be a negative. So you do want to use an editor to help kind of catch some of those. But a lot of people come into it thinking they need to be able to write typo free, and that's going to make their writing valuable to businesses when it really has nothing to do with what makes a piece of writing valuable to businesses. And so it's absolutely, there's a lot of things from kind of a conversational writing tone instead of a formal tone to even the formatting of breaking it up and making the content kind of scannable. You know, using a lot of mechanisms that break up the text, like bullet points, subheaders, you know, media, stuff like that. It's not hard to learn. You look up, you know, you just if you hop on Google and look up how to write a blog post or how to write an online post or something, you're going to find, you know, almost every result's going to cover the little simple checklist you need in terms of specifics. It's not hard to learn, but there are definitely quite noticeable differences. And the more ingrained people come in from the more formal side, a lot of times the harder it is to transition into that more casual tone.
Yeah, it reminds me of an interview. Oh, so many interviews I did with Julia McCoy. She also said that like those students, especially exactly as what you mentioned, Jacob, with a degree in writing or literature, they are not even hireable based on her experience because she had to do so much untraining, unlearning so that they can learn. And it is really, really interesting. I never thought that I can have one word as a paragraph, like for example, right? Or one sentence, like capitalized in the middle of the sentence. Like, what is that? But you will need that when you look at your blog, you know, when you look at Neil Patel, they all do that. It's just like readability, right? Skim through, and which makes so much sense. Yeah. And I love this comment from Christopher regarding what you said earlier. You know, those life lessons learned at a much younger age that provides us with interesting insights. That's exactly what I do at Classroom Without Walls. I really connect my young students with people like Jacob. So you have that role model. You know what is happening. Yeah. So great point. I also love this comment from Lance saying that LinkedIn is a blog. I agree, right? And you can write articles there. I think for all the people watching this live right now or watching on replay should really practice and pick up a social, even if you may not have a website yet, you can still use an amazing platform like LinkedIn to practice that type of long form content. I know you recently interviewed a lady, I forgot her name, I'm sorry, but this young lady, her journey started doing things on LinkedIn, right? Using LinkedIn. I think you did an interview with her last year or so. She's doing really good. And maybe you can quickly share that story with us. Someone using LinkedIn, like showing up consistently and generating leads, practicing mini blogs there. Yeah.
Yeah. So her name's Michal Isakowitz. And she built a huge writing business solely through LinkedIn. And then she's even since our interview, she's built very lucrative side businesses purely through LinkedIn too. Just basically building, consistently posting on LinkedIn. For her, it's mostly like more, feed posts instead of like doing the articles. But I've seen people do both. And it's just one of those things like, you know, any place that you can build a large audience of people who will see what you're going to say when you want to say something new, when you want to sell something, can be super powerful. And I've actually since connected with quite a few other copywriters and marketers who are all using LinkedIn, you know, to sell and and bringing in quite a lot of business just through consistently, and for a lot of them posting every single day on LinkedIn, and they've been doing it for years. And it's just, that's honestly the thing I love most about the internet is the more I see people who just show up every day and put some work in and are just consistent. I have friends who aren't even like particularly great writers, or I have other friends who aren't even like necessarily sophisticated marketers, but they just show up every day and they've been just grinding for years and years and years, and they're making like more money than I am, like they're making incredible sums of money just by virtue of putting in a little work every single day and doing work that sort of stacks and builds on itself. Anything you can do to build an audience. Like for me, it's SEO and to building an email list. But every piece of work that I put on that doesn't just pay off for me, the next day. It pays off for me for years and years after. And so when you can put in those little bits of work on things to, it just has a really incredibly high, payoff ratio over the course of a career.
Oh, I so agree. Showing up consistently and, taking actions that are imperfect, I think definitely makes a big difference. And that's really how I build my business. It's just through LinkedIn, long form content, doing shows, and just showing up consistently. And I always joke when I look at my very first LinkedIn post, or when I look at my very first video live streaming interview I did, I was like, oh my God. Delete, right? That's embarrassing for me to watch. But like everyone has to have that journey. If everything is perfect, you're just waiting for too long. So I love that piece of advice. So really, really, really powerful. And
if you can have the mentality that you're always going to be bad at something at first. Like nobody starts out good at anything meaningful. Even people with massive amounts of talent, it takes you a while to come into your talent. And so like so many people come into the writing field or the marketing field expecting to knock home runs out on, the first at bat. And that just literally doesn't exist. So, but if you can come in knowing, hey, I'm going to be terrible at this until I put in 200 reps, until I come in and just can, get in the reps to get better, then, you're going to have a much easier journey towards success than if you come in expecting to be good at anything right off the bat.
Oh, amen. Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I agree. So here, I think it's from Heather. Thank you for joining us live. And she said, great point about consistency of posting helps to dedicate your attention to a few platforms. A great idea is definitely consistency. I remember when you did that interview with that young lady, she said that because she was showing up so consistently and she has built up her pipeline. And for some time, she's like, I don't even want to post on LinkedIn anymore because I can't even handle the inquiries coming in. I was like, wow, what a great problem to have, right? So that's like the ROI of showing up consistently and like doing valuable things and like great. Yeah. And so here's great comment from Josiah saying like reading other blogs can definitely help. I really like so many people on my show mentioned this, right? Just like copy others, learn from others, modeling others. Even when I interviewed Seth Godin, he said that, you there are so many people out there, you can just like study them and copy them and learn from them. And then, that's like even phrase, just like read their books. So I so agree. Just learn from those people who have already made it. Yeah.
I never like write copy from scratch. Anytime I'm working on a new project, I always go look for like a similar business that's like been doing this longer. And I just look at what they're doing and how they're approaching the topic to inform my own journey in building an outline. And it's obviously it's not, I don't copy them, but like a lot of people think they just need to magically come up with stuff on their own. They just need to reach into some, exclusive well and pull out magic. And you really don't. Like, we have like all of, we have like 6-7 billion people on the planet all doing amazing stuff that we can go look at and inform what we're doing off of, people who have done it before us.
I mean, one thing I learned from my own very short copywriting journey is that nowadays, when I need to talk about something, I actually first Google to see what other people are talking about this. And you look at the top 5 articles to see like where are they top 5 and can you do something better, other things they talked about that you don't know or things that you know they haven't talked about. So that's really how I get started now. It makes a huge difference. So that is a great point. So thanks for sharing that. To wrap this up, what a great conversation. And I also want to ask you, Jacob, because I saw on Facebook that you have two lovely family and 2 young children. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about education, knowing what you know today regarding education, business, all those things. I know your kids are still very young, but how has this body of knowledge that you have acquired over the last several years going to influence your own parenting approach?
Yeah, I think I'm going to encourage them to really just like go all in on whatever it is that they're wanting to do at the moment. Even if it doesn't last, even if it's like not a forever thing, probably one of my biggest regrets from growing up is just that I was always overly practical with my own capacity. I always felt like, I always like my mind was like, if I can't be the best at this, why pursue it? Or if I'm not sure that I can succeed in this specific way, I'm just not. I'm gonna wait and try something that's like, more reliable. And I think there are certain, positions and conditions people can be in where choosing the reliable option is the right choice. I don't necessarily regret that I made certain practical decisions, but for my kids, I just want to encourage them to, if they have something they want to do, just go all in, really commit to trying to make it happen for a preset season of time, and then just see what they're capable of. I think one of the biggest things from that door-to-door job that I learned was I had a period a few weeks in where I was having like daily panic attacks for like 3 weeks. And in pushing through that, I kind of just like learned a bit about what I was personally capable of, and I think when you have moments in life where you really go all in and really push yourself to see if you can accomplish something phenomenal, or unusual even just. And I think it's where you really learn the most about yourself. It's where you really gain the most confidence. And so I think that's going to be the big thing, is just encouraging them to, go all in on their interests. And then at a certain point when they start to really be thinking about long-term career and their own kind of financial side of things, I'm going to encourage them to go in directions that build upon themselves. Things where the actions, kind of like what we mentioned earlier, the actions that they take today have compounding value instead of just, immediately kind of maybe a one-time value. And so I think those are probably the 2 biggest things.
Totally, compound effect. And also reminds me of another interview I did with another successful entrepreneur. He said that the main reason of his success was that because he was learning what he was interested in as opposed to what he was supposed to learn. Yeah. So I think that is such a great piece of advice for anyone out there, especially for people who are still in school. It is so important that you have schoolwork to do, but always remember that the thing that ignites your own passion, learning what you are interested in as opposed to what you are supposed to learn. Yeah. Great. Such a great interview, Jacob. Thank you. So share with us. I have been sharing already. Like, where is a good place for people to connect with you and check out your amazing blog articles and the free online course you shared? So share that with us.
Yeah, if you head over to my website, jacobmcmillen.com, I have over 176,000 words of free blog content available. I think I counted it out. It'd be like 4 or 5 books worth of stuff on there. And then I every week I do, and I'm constantly publishing more blog content. But then every week I also do a 10-minute, episode that on writing, marketing, or freelancing that I have on YouTube and via a podcast. So you can find that via the podcast link on my website. So yeah, lots of stuff. If you're wanting to learn more about writing, marketing, or freelancing, then definitely check it out. And lots there and lots more to come.
I absolutely love how you are doing the recap of your interviews. I'm like, wow, I feel ashamed of myself for how little I do after interviews. Like, I was looking at your articles, like, wow, every single one of them is just so good. I'm going to send it to my VA to like study and copy. It's really, really good. Everyone should check it out. Yeah, yeah, to follow some good practices. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time and everything, and really, really honored to have you. And thank you so much, everyone, joining us live. And from all over the globe, getting up early, staying up late. So really excited to have you all here. So just a quick announcement for next week. Today is one of those days I'm actually prepared. Normally, I have no idea who's coming next, but today I'm actually prepared. So let me share my screen with you real quick. So next week, I'm actually having a LinkedIn superstar, Shay, on the show. And many of you probably know her, and she is also featured in our book. So I'm really, really excited for next week's interview. So bookmark your calendar and join us live, and definitely follow Shay if you haven't, and also follow Jacob if you haven't done so already. So thank you so much again, Jacob. You are absolutely amazing. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live. Have a great weekend, and hopefully to see you next Friday, same time, same location. Bye, everyone.